Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the guy who picked Rafael Fiziev to defeat Magomed Mustafayev. And I'm here to talk about Neil Magny versus Mike Malott. Mike Malott is 32 years old, 10-1-1 as a pro, and he's given up 2 inches of height and 7 inches of reach to 36-year-old Magny, who is 28-11. These guys are only 4 years apart in age, but Neil Magny, as a fighter, is essentially like Mike Malott's grandfather. He's got a lot of experience. Mike Malott, he's the prospect. I was about to call him a young prospect. He is 32, but he's just getting going, it feels like, and he's already soaring. He's looked phenomenal since he made it to the UFC. He's gotten wins over Adam Fugit, the guillotine in round 2, after he dropped him with a few hooks. Johan Lennes took him down deep into round 1 and arm triangle choked him pretty quickly. That was very impressive. And knocked out Mickey Gall in his debut with a beautiful left uppercut, maybe halfway to a hook, somewhere in between. But it was a beautiful punch, and that was in the middle of a combination too. And that was as he was being pressured. He's looked phenomenal, Mike Malott. And he is a welterweight. Obviously, this is at welterweight, but his one loss and his one draw take place at featherweight and lightweight. He was knocked out close to 10 years ago, probably, getting there, against Hakeem Dawodu, a current UFC featherweight, very good fighter, and Hakeem knocked him out towards the end of round 1. That was Mike Malott with the same height anyway, and he was 25 pounds lighter. So he, I think, took a cue from that fight and decided to move up in weight. And then his lightweight fight that went to a draw was in Bellator against this guy Ousmane something. And it was a failure of his cardio that led to the draw, and also his inability to finish. But he was dominating the guy early, gassed himself out, and then was in survival mode for the final 2 rounds. So maybe he took a cue from that, and here he is at 170, and so far he's looked pretty healthy. Again, he hasn't been past round 2. He hasn't been past round 1, really, ever, aside from the draw, I believe, and the guillotine over Adam Fugit. But other than that, he steamrolls everybody. He also beat Shimon Smatrisky outside the UFC on the Contender Series. That was a guillotine in 30 seconds on the Contender Series. And Solomon Renfro, who's a good fighter outside the UFC, and he rear naked choked him. But all these guys, I mean, Neil Magny's got 10 wins that are better than Mike Malott's best win, whatever that is. So Mike Malott, as good as he's looked, he just hasn't proven himself yet. And look, I see what everybody else sees. The promise is there, but this is going to be a very telling fight. Neil Magny, he is 28-11. He's got 11 finishes, 7 by TKO, 4 by submission, 17 by decision. He is an excellent point fighter. His record on points is 17-3. He's just excellent. He has been finished 8 times, though. Twice by knockout, 6 by submission. The 2 guys that knock him out are Santiago Ponzinibbio in round 4. And despite it being in round 4, he actually knocked him out in that 4th round. And Lorenz Larkin just went through him like a buzzsaw in 1 round. And also, he was knocked dead by Mike Ricci on The Ultimate Fighter, probably close to 10 years ago, with a vicious elbow in round 2. And that's it, though, as far as his chin goes. It's failed him 3 times over the course of many, many fights and many, many years. He has been submitted a little more. He's got 6 submission losses. He's been arm triangle choked. He lost the same fight pretty much to Rafael dos Anjos and Gilbert Burns. Both arm triangle choked him in round 1. Shavkat Rakhmonov guillotined him 2 years ago or whatever against the cage. And before that, it was Damian Maia rear naked choking him, which, you know, Damian Maia's the best grappler out of everybody he's fought, and one of the best grapplers ever in the UFC. And before that, he was triangle choked by Sergio Moraes earlier in the UFC and submitted by this other capable guy who never really stuck with MMA. But submission losses over the course of, again, over a decade or close to it, very forgivable because that's an excellent level of competition. I'm not saying Mike Malott can't go through him with a submission, but he is not on the level of any of those guys that have beaten him. Not yet, anyway. So I see what everybody else sees with Mike Malott. It would make sense that he wins this fight, but I'm going with Neil Magny. I think Neil Magny, not that he's going to make the most of his 7 inches of reach on the feet and whatever, but he's got a big frame and he wants to crowd Mike Malott. I don't know if he's going to be able to take him down, but I think he could crowd him against the cage. I feel like I said all this shit with Ian Gary. And Ian Gary he's never lost or went to a draw or whatever. Mike Malott, we've seen a few weaknesses throughout his career. Again, these were at different weight classes, so I don't put too much stock in them. But Neil Magny is such a tried and tested veteran, and even now, I don't know what his ranking is or whatever, but he's not some shit fighter, despite how he looked against Ian Gary. And I think there's room for Neil Magny to do what he's done to many great fighters, even recently. Daniel Rodriguez, that third-round submission. Neil's never been the most flashy fighter or exciting fighter, but he is one of the more consistent fighters. So I'm assuming his chin is still healthy. I think if he's able to defend takedowns from Mike Malott, he'll keep himself safe from potential arm triangles, even though Malott's got guillotines, arm bars, rear naked chokes, and the rest. But Neil Magny, if he keeps himself off his back, he can be somewhat safe here. And from there, it's a matter of him trying to test the cardio of Mike Malott, take some of the life out of him by crowding him and trying to make him fatigue. Because I think the draw that Mike Malott has is more of a path to victory, or a draw, I guess, for Neil Magny than Hakeem Dawodu knocking him out. Neil Magny, he's a comfortable striker, but he's not a deadly striker. So I'm picking Neil Magny. My heart's not totally into it because I've seen how good Mike Malott looks, and he looks phenomenal. But again, Neil Magny's got 10 wins and 10 losses, better than anybody Mike Malott's ever been in the cage with. So I'm going with experience. And no doubt I bet on it at plus 275, but not heavily because, again, I see what everybody else sees. I've seen Mike Malott in these fights, and he looks phenomenal. He's looked better than Neil Magny's ever looked. But, you know, Adam Fugit is different from Daniel Rodriguez and Gilbert Burns and all these other guys I just talked about. Fucking Shavkat. So we'll see what happens, but let's go Neil Magny. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit. Check out my other videos.